Well, hello, East Hill Church. My name is Ryan. We're bringing you another great look into our Heart for the Mission offering and the things that are going to that offering. And today we get to talk to our former lead pastor, Jason Albelo, who has an amazing work he's doing with Foursquare as an emissary. Let's start off by talking to Pastor Jason. Hey, Jason, tell us about what it is that you are doing now with Foursquare.
Yeah. Well, my name is Jason Albelo, and Nikki and myself were the former lead pastors of East Hill Church. And we led and served East Hill for 19 years in a variety of roles, 12 of the last 12 of which as the lead pastor.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What have you been up to since October? So just about a year and a half almost, or just over a year. What have you been up to? Share us a little bit of the background and where you've been and where you're going.
Sure. Well, in the last, let's see, we'll start in 2019. In 2019, we just sensed the Lord starting to stir some things inside of us to say, trust me, follow me off of your map. And it was a Genesis 12 kind of go to a land that I will show you, which sounds really exciting. And it is, don't get me wrong. But what I somehow missed in that part was that before you get to see the land that God is going to show you, you have to leave the land that you're in, that you're comfortable with, that you know. And so that meant for us, we knew we needed to step out of leading East Hill. And so we got to do it in faith. So we stepped out in August. And it wasn't really, we sensed that there was going to be something missional that was going to come out of this, us being involved in missions for so many years. And in the last 2 years of serving as the lead pastor of East Hill, I became the district missions rep for the North Pacific District. And so I knew that I sensed that it was going to be something related to that, but I really didn't know what it would be. And it wasn't until January that this whole idea of becoming an emissary came together. And an emissary is a domestically based, globally assigned Foursquare missionary, but they have a particular assignment. And so a particular focus. And our focus is leadership development, church multiplication, and national church development in the 25 nations of Southern and Eastern Africa. So if you were to look on a map of Africa, like the one over my shoulder, you would start basically at the top of Sudan, and you would go east out of Sudan through around the Horn of Africa. So that's Eritrea, Djibouti, Somalia, down through Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, Malawi, around the bottom of South Africa, including Lesotho and Swaziland, up through Angola, Namibia, then back into the middle of the country through Zambia, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, and back to South Sudan. And that's the area. So it's a big chunk of, it's pretty close to half the continent of Africa. And then I'll continue working also with Pastor Isaac Komolafe in Nigeria, northern Nigeria, and then also globally with Foursquare Disaster Relief. And Foursquare Disaster Relief, all of these, the work that I do, the one common element of this with Foursquare Missions is we believe in developing and releasing indigenous leaders. So we believe fundamentally that Ethiopians and Kenyans and Rwandans are going to be much better at reaching Ethiopian, Kenyan, and Ugandans than Oregonians ever will be. And so our desire is to want to go into these places and to partner with the indigenous leaders that are there to raise up, in some cases, training teams to release nations so that they can pursue the call of God for themselves. And they can become independently standing brothers and sisters in Christ that aren't necessarily dependent upon the U.S. church, but are in partnership with the U.S. and the global Foursquare Church. There are about, in the North Pacific District, that's the district of churches that East Hill is a part of, there are about 105 in Oregon, Southwest Washington, and Alaska. In the US, there are 1,500, but globally, there are over 94,000 Foursquare churches. So Foursquare is an enormous family outside of the United States.
Taking notes, that's good stuff. What I appreciate about this call and what you're doing, Jace, is that you have those four distinct things that you're doing, four distinctives that you're doing in ministry now, but they all heavily depend on each other for
Yeah.
success. And so it's not just, okay, we're going to fix Uganda by working on this, but instead you're bolstering all of them. And unless they're all moving up and they're all being worked together, you're going to have giant holes and they're not going to grow. Is that what I'm catching you sending out?
Yeah, that is, I love the way that you said that, Ryan. That's actually, I'm taking notes on how you said that, um, because that's exactly it. The leadership development, like the ability to respond compassionately with a holistic gospel response, depends directly on the developmental level of that leadership. That is its structures, that is the way that it thinks about itself, the way it interacts with its community, the way it thinks missionally, the way it thinks about accountability. And so, some of the national church development that we will do will come alongside their boards and work with the area missionaries in those areas, the regional coordinators for Foursquare missions, and help them think through bylaws for a national movement. What are the things that need to be in place? That's the kind of stuff that we get to be a part of. And then you add to that component, what's at stake here? When we look at the areas that we're dealing with a significant population of the world. And when you look at like the Joshua Project and the number of unreached people groups, the region that we're operating in is loaded with unreached people groups. Right now, there are about 2.5 billion, billion with a B, unreached people groups. And an unreached people group is a people group that has less than 2% of their population has access to an evangelical church or an evangelical church planting movement. And these are folks that are facing a Christless eternity, not because they're resistant to the gospel, not at all, but because they've never heard it. They've never had someone preach the gospel in language they understand. And that's why Indigenous leadership development is so crucial. Because there are, like an example, in Rwanda, there are Rwandans who are getting calls on their life to go and reach Somalia. Why does that matter? Because Somalia is a country that has kicked out all of its pastors and churches. And it's loaded with unreached people groups. And a huge opportunity that is there. It also, we're talking about Sudan and South Sudan. We have like 40 churches in South Sudan that's in the middle of a civil war and has been for years. But in the midst of all of that chaos happening, the church is thriving because it is giving a gospel proclamation from locals, indigenous leaders who are choosing to preach the gospel in the midst of war.
Incredible. Can you pull a thread together for me? I see it, but can you make it super crystal clear? For our Heart for the Mission offering, our vision is to address people's practical needs locally and globally so they can experience the love of God and know that they're seen. In light of that vision, can you spell out a bit of how that connects with what you are doing as an emissary in East Southern Africa and FDR?
Absolutely. So I'll start with East and Southern Africa, then I'll move to Foursquare Disaster Relief. So with our mission of developing leaders, the local church's capacity to, in the words of St. Francis of Assisi, to preach the gospel and, if necessary, use words, hinges on those leaders being trained to think that way, to think that the church is more than just services on Sunday. That's how the church handles those situations. Like if they need clean water, to help them think through, how do we get them in touch with clean water, access to clean water? How do we help them to think about, and not just bringing in some outside organization, but looking around them to believe and see the resources that are there, that are in their people, in their body. In many cases, most of the stuff that they really need is right within the surrounding areas. And it's just about helping them connect those resources. It's about finding partners, US partners that will bring in to help them, to train them, to resource them. And so what we're doing in training leadership, and that leadership is theology, it's in some cases it's biblical theology, helping them to interpret the scriptures. It's discipling, teaching them how to make disciples who make disciples. So teaching them to think about their surroundings and how to use the felt need as an instrument of reaching people's greatest need, which is the issue of eternity. So whether that is, we've been in groups of, you've been with me, Ryan, where we've been in meetings with African leaders where they're talking about tangible needs they have, fertilizer, where they have tangible needs of transportation, tangible needs of food, and then making sure that we bring in folks that can help them think through and learn methods of sustainable farming and put that in the context of a gospel presentation, in the context of living missionally with people. Education as another facet of that. So what we do is we work with, everything rises. John Maxwell says everything rises and falls on leadership. And I truly believe that is true. That our ability to be able to meet those tangible needs hinges directly on the integrity, on the character, on the discipleship, on the theology of those leaders. And as we are able to strengthen, come alongside, encourage, and equip them, then they are that much more equipped to be able to live the mission that God's put them in and put them on. So Foursquare Disaster Relief does these same things, but we do them in some specific ways because we want to come alongside national churches as they are responding to national disasters. So classic illustration that is this project, Foursquare Disaster Relief's doing Project Road to Hope. So we've been doing that actually for a couple of years. And what I'm holding is a pair of shoes that they will use. And one of the initiatives that we're doing is we're giving churches the opportunity to partner with this, where they can contribute towards a pair of shoes, and like $10 gets you 2 pairs of socks and a pair of shoes to help refugees who are walking. Get this, they're walking from Venezuela, in some cases 90, 100 miles, and they're doing it on flip-flops and sandals. I can't imagine walking 1 mile, let alone 90. And when we think about Colombia, at least maybe you don't think this way, but I thought, oh, it's all like warm, nice places. But Colombia is mountainous. So there are portions of Bogota, which I'm actually flying to tonight to get there and to be a part of this, that are just about as cold as they are here, because there's such an elevation change. So they're having refugees, like about over 5 million of them, that are pouring out of Venezuela, and that are dying of exposure. They're leaving Venezuela with the clothes on their back and whatever they can carry. And so the Colombian Foursquare Church said, we have all of these people that are here. How can we say we follow Jesus Christ and not respond to this? How can we say that we believe in the living God who is the living hope and yet not have a response to what's going on here? And so they reached out to the other Foursquare family around the world and said, hey, can you help us do, here's what's in our heart. And this is the beauty of this. This isn't some colonial, we thought up of this great idea and now you guys go do this. This is the Colombians responding to the Spirit of God saying, hey, we've got it in our heart to do this. Can we bring food and clothing to these refugees who are literally on a road looking for hope? And the rest of the Foursquare Church around the world said, absolutely, we've got your back. And so we get to be a part of that. The same thing has happened with Adopt a Pastor, with Foursquare Disaster Relief, another project that Nikki and I work on tangibly for Foursquare Disaster Relief. And that is to help pastors who are struggling because of the COVID shutdown. COVID has affected everyone listening to this video. And it's one thing in the West, but it's a whole nother deal in developing nations around the world. And there is not a region that Foursquare serves. I just spent a week with area coordinators for Foursquare missions around the globe, and there wasn't one of them who didn't have pastors who are struggling to figure out where their next meal is going to come from, because they have no capacity to meet, they have no capacity to work, and no capacity to gain food for them, their leaders, or their family. And so this has been an initiative. In fact, that's one of Foursquare's focal point initiatives for this year. So those are the projects that we're working on, and all of those are hinge on leadership. And so part of what I'm going down to Columbia to do is to meet with leaders, hear them, find out what are some of the challenges that they're dealing with, try to resource them at the points of those challenges, to train about distribution points and what ways they can optimize the distribution point that they have, and what ways we can help, all of that.
You talked about Road to Hope. You talked about Adopt a Pastor. When we talk about the Heart for the Mission offering, getting very localized here, is that where this money is going to go? That when people donate it and it comes towards the emissaries of Jason and Nikki Albelo, where is that money going to go to? Is it for examples like this, or is it beyond this? What does that look like?
So good question. So when you contribute to Nikki and the, let me say this again. When you contribute to our ministry, you are contributing to all of this. So it is leadership development. It is church multiplication. It is national church development. It's specific projects that we work on within Foursquare Disaster Relief. There are other give points that you can access to give specifically to some of the things that I've talked about. But when you contribute to Nikki and me, you contribute to a broad spectrum of projects that we're working on, of initiatives that we're working on, but really you could sum it all up with, it's about leadership development, because everything rises and falls off of that.
That's good. Let's in theory, and hopefully this isn't much of a theory, but let's in theory say someone is watching this video, they feel inspired to want to join in with your mission, your calling, and what's going on beyond just a one-time gift to an offering. How does some people? What does partnering with the Albelos look like as emissaries? What does that look like?
So great question. So in terms of an access point, I mean, they can give directly through East Hill Church. There are a designated account that is there for us. They can also go directly to our Foursquare website, and they can contribute that way. Beyond that, though, Nikki and I are huge believers that partnership is a two-way street. That partnering with us means that we are connecting and praying for you directly. So we will communicate with all of our partners and find out, hey, how can we be interceding for you and praying for you? In addition to that, there are opportunities that we will have to do quarterly prayer gatherings where we will invite people to join as much as COVID will allow us to be together, or on Zoom. We did both last time. And so our next one's going to be coming up in January. We're going to be putting together a Zoom, in-person, socially distant, whatever we need to, prayer gathering for the region. Where we will pray for them. It also means that you'll receive monthly newsletters of what's happening, and you'll receive a prayer guide like the one that I showed you earlier. I got in my hand here that kind of, when you open it up, it has a map of Africa, and it shows all of the national leaders of each of the nations that we're working with, so that you have people that you can pray for specifically. As we develop relationships within nations, within the region, there can be opportunities for specific teams with specific skill sets to join us in doing things in bringing training that the field needs. And I want to be clear that it's not me who sets that agenda. It is a national leader, an indigenous leader. So it's the mission field saying jump, and really me saying how high and in what direction. That's good mission, good missiology. And then, like, another example would be if there are medical providers. Man, if there are medical providers there that are medically minded individuals who are interested, there could be opportunities for you to join the Foursquare Disaster Release Let me say that again. There could be opportunities for you to join the Foursquare Disaster Relief Medical Response Team. Doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, EMTs, even logisticians. We have need for folks who think logistically about things and are willing to be trained. We have a desire to want to be able to respond globally to these issues when they happen. And to do that, we need a team of folks. So these are another opportunity to be able to partner with us. So that's what partnership can look like.
That's incredible, Jason. As we wrap up this time we have together, are there any parting thoughts, anything that you want to add before we end our conversation?
Thanks, Ryan. I think one thing I would want to say is, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you for being such a generous, spirit-led body of believers called the East Hill family. That's one thing that I have seen for 30 plus years that I have been at East Hill. It has been extraordinary to watch the grace of God. There's a grace on the house of East Hill. To be a people who are responding with a full gospel, compassionate response to the people that are around them, locally and globally. And Nikki and I just want to say thank you so much for your heart to partner and to be responsive to the voice of the living God.
That's incredible, Pastor Jason. Thank you so much for taking time and walking us through what God's put on your heart. And thank you for doing what God's calling you to do. We couldn't be more thankful for you and Nikki, and God bless you guys in your future endeavors. And we're excited to partner with you more.
Thanks so much, Ryan.